Go ahead.
You asked for it, you get it. Ryu and I will rip your photos into smithereens. Hold on to your headphones. Here comes the pain.
And Happy New Year, everybody. This is 2019, and it's already February, so you probably can't say Happy New Year. But anyway, it is Happy New Year. So Happy New Year from Big Lens Fast Shutter, and yeah, let's hope that we're gonna have some good quality or bad quality, really, training ground for this year. So we're gonna start off with Toyin and the photo that we always love, not the steeplechase, the hurdles. There you go, Matt Cohen.
So I don't want to discourage things like this because I think it's a good idea, right? But the problem is the marshals are always going to be behind the runners. And before they take off, there's not enough distance between the runner and the marshals. So if those, if the people in the white shirts and the black pants weren't there, I would say this is okay. It's not a great moment, but it's a good use of the surroundings. It's a good, documentary picture of what's going on here. The problem is that you can't get rid of the people in the background. You can't blur them out because there's not enough distance. They're just going to be back there. I don't know if they move before the race actually starts or something, but I would use this angle, but try to get something different. I would rather even just see feet if the feet were closer to you and you could blur out the background. That would be my preference for this. Wait until they start and then let them get some distance and then figure out how to focus on the feet hitting the ground in between the hurdles and then taking off or something. Make it a more dynamic kind of picture. That would solve both the problem that they're not doing anything here and the problem of not having enough depth of field in it. So that would be my suggestion on this.
My eyes really wander, when I look at this picture, and that's not a good thing. And the fact that there's nothing on the Mueller side, which is the left side really, of things, that bothers me. If it's something like this, it has to be quite an extreme thing. So if it's really properly, not really properly set up, but a very conventional way is to actually have that person really in the middle, and then you have on either side, other runners also crouching down. Like Matt said, no one in the background. You can just so, because then your eyes would really focus on that person. On this one, he's shifted towards the left, which I have no problem with it. But the thing is, it's not the extreme left. It's kind of a mild left, and you can see the Mueller thing in the background, and that's just not a good thing, because my eyes would just go over to Mueller all the time and not towards her. And you just have to compose better. And it's a matter of composition. It's a matter of actually figuring out what's also in the background. So just like what Matt alluded to, you need to make sure that you don't actually have anything like that in the background that distracts the eyes of the viewer. So hopefully, better luck next time. Let's see, because I need to find out. This is Toyin as well. And let me have so many fucking things open. I'm fine with this, but also it's, to me, I really don't need a Mueller thing. Because what I really want to just see is just the background really does matter. If there's more, and if it's actually not working with your picture, and if it's working against your picture, in this case, it really just my eyes just going to shift towards that, because there's also the color as well. It's quite bright red, and what you want someone to actually see is the jumper and the surrounding, not the surrounding, but the jumper is what you want the people to see. And this, I don't think it was really necessary to actually put the sand pit Because like, why do I really need to see a sample? Like, when that should be just sky and the person flying. Could be, it might be much more dramatic than this. Um, but you don't really want to, like, whenever you see a picture like this, you have to have a look and say, okay, is it distracting? Is whatever actually is in the background or the foreground or whatever else, does it actually, like, kind of take away from the main person or the main subject? And in this case, the person jumping from the right to the left. So to me, yeah, I really don't like it.
I think a lot of times you want context in it, but I think other times it's really clear what's happening. So this guy just against that sky, I think would have been just fine.
It would be a
You
really
can
cool
tell,
photo,
yeah, you can tell that he's, I don't know, long jumper, triple jumper. You definitely don't need that sign. Um, it, it does suck a little bit because if that wasn't there, I think it would be even better. That, because you would have the context of him jumping up against the grandstand and the trees and all the sky in the background. But I think that if your choice is no context with no Mueller sign and context with it, I think you have to go without it. So I think just the jumper, he's in a cool enough position. The sky behind him is blue enough. It's not like a plain gray sky, or it's there's enough going on in the background of the sky with the clouds. So I would say, yeah, get even lower and aim up higher and just get him against the sky. I think you have to account for the signs like that. I know it's part of the quote unquote playing field and it's there and it is important, but this picture isn't about how far he's jumping. It's about his form. And so his form against the sky, I think would have been enough. I think it's fine, for what it is. I think it's fine. I
Yeah.
think it shows planning and it's carefully, the horizons and everything are okay. It's fine as it is. Like, this isn't a bad picture. But I think when you find yourself in this position with this kind of access, you really need to squeeze every last drop out of it. Excuse me. And I think that squeezing every last drop out of it would be just like a character study of his form and his muscles and the sky and the clouds in the background. I think that would be enough.
Scott, the wrestler Hawk Hog. Oh, Stog Hog. No. Do I have to explain, like, why it's a no, or I guess I have to.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a good moment, right? There is somebody in midair. There is somebody pulling him into midair, but the light's not great, and that's always going to be a problem. I know it's a problem for wrestling. You should really be strobing, I think, figuring out how to set up some lights, maybe right on the edge of where the mats are. I don't know if they allow you to do it, but they should. And you really do need to get rid of the ambient light and add your own light here, because there's just a ceiling to how good the pictures are going to be in this kind of light. It's the same light that's on the crowd in the background. So you just lose the form, even though you've done everything right. You got the depth of field right. You got the timing right. The light is just going to kill you every single time. Like, there's just not enough light directed on the subject that's not directed on the background. And it's also not white light. It's, I mean, fluorescent or incandescent or whatever, but it's not helping your pictures at all. You need to strobe stuff like this where you're just not getting the quality light and you're not getting it enough where you want it, and it's spilling into the background. If you strobe this kind of stuff and your shutter speed is where it should be, and your ISO is where it should be, you can all but kill the ambient light and you can do some really cool things. And if you can't do it here, then you just have to recognize you're not going to be doing your best work in this situation. You wouldn't. It's just the situation that you're in. It's just not going to produce great pictures.
And I also, like, just in terms of the composition and everything, for me, like, it's not very exciting. And if you had a longer lens, if you're actually sitting a bit, well, I don't think you can probably get sit any closer because you're probably just like that's where you just as close as you can sit. But so maybe it's a longer lens, then you could have just like gotten like the guys and the arms and everything else. Like I don't really need the legs, like we don't have to like make sure that the legs are always in, all the
Well,
limbs are
the
in.
problem is that his hand is going so far down that there's not really any good place to cut this off.
I could have just like easily just cut it off like just face and face and you know what I mean like
Yeah, there's not enough there for that.
I would have.
But there's not enough there to make it a good picture is what I'm saying. Like you could have done that, but it wouldn't have changed anything.
Well, then it's probably not a good picture to start with.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say. Like, because the thing is, like, this composition itself is really boring. It's like, subject, center, boom, that's it.
Yeah, there's
And we don't
there's too
want
much
that,
space. There's too much space on the sides, and when you have a this is kind of like an R, and so you're
Mhm.
always going to have too much space underneath and beside the legs like this. Like when you have like a conflict like this, you want everything to be all in the same place, and it's just too stretched out, um, to really crop it in a way that's going to have a high impact. So yes, he is in midair, but you really want something where you can cut it down to its essence and not end up having weird decisions about where to crop and, oh, I can't cut off a leg here or a hand here. And you're just letting too much of the background come in. So that's something to think about, not necessarily when you're shooting, because when you're shooting and you see somebody up in the air, you're naturally going to shoot. And that's a good instinct to have. But the problem is that when it's in that R shape or an L shape or something like that, where any which way you crop it, there's going to be too much of the background and not enough action. And that's an editing thing more than a shooting thing.
That's kind of like the other side of it, really, that you get things cut out because you went very close, but like in a quite,
But this is better. This is a way
yeah.
better picture than the other one. And I don't mind that the leg is cut off because, that's one of the places where you can cut it off. And I think the action is good enough, but you still have the lighting problem. Like the light is just not quality enough for you to be doing this. Like I think people conflate the two issues, whether there's enough light and whether the light is good or not. So you can get a fast enough shutter speed to freeze this action, but the problem is that the quality of the light and the direction of the light and where it's spilling is still not enough to make it a good picture. You did everything right here except for controlling the light. And again, during wrestling, you really should be able to use strobes. Like they're not shooting at anything. They're not on a balance beam or something like that. Like you should be able to put some strobes on stands so that they're not directly in their eyes, shooting down a little bit. You can have diffusers on there so it's not as bright to their eyes or something, but you should really be doing this work because I don't want you to go so far down this road that you have all these opportunities to do this and you're practicing and getting better on your composition and your timing, but you're leaving out the whole other component, which is the only thing that you need is more light and better light.
Yeah.
High school sports are like this. Listen, when I was shooting high school basketball in gyms that had orange lights in there for whatever reason, or old lights that were really grimy looking, I did not like getting there 2 hours before a high school game when I was barely getting paid to be there to set up lights and make sure that all my batteries were charged and everything was taped off and out of the way of everybody. Like that sucked. But I wasn't going to go out there and come back with pictures that I knew I was doing everything right, but still look bad. So at some point, whether it's at this gym or whether it's wherever you can talk your way into being able to use lights, you're going to have to do it. That's just it.
Yeah.
And you don't need $1,000,
No,
studio
you
lights
don't.
or
I mean,
whatever to
like,
do
I
this.
think,
You can
yeah,
do this.
like,
You can do it with speed lights and, even, I don't know, what is he shooting? Does it say?
Hmm?
What kind of camera is it? Just scroll down.
It's
Okay.
5D
I don't know.
Mark IV.
Yeah. I don't know the Canon system or whatever, but I do know that in a small space like this, where you're going to be able to have line of sight and bouncing or whatever, just regular speed lights would be able to trigger each other enough to do this. So you just need like some kind of controller, whether it's radio or infrared or whatever. You should definitely be able to do this with like three speed lights on stands. There's just
Or
no
just
other way
try with
around it.
like, or yeah, or just like try with one, and hopefully they'll face that way when you're
Yeah, you
taking a
could,
picture.
right.
You
You
know?
could do
Like,
one. You could definitely do one for
yeah.
sure, but you're limiting what you're going to be able to get. And then the
Yeah,
pictures
but
that
if
don't
the
work.
like, I think budget wise, like, you know, I think start with one and see how it goes, and go
Right.
with two.
Right. I'm
And
just saying.
you to have like all four corners covered, you know. So, but
Right.
you can't do it, and you can't do it.
The
Right?
the
So,
problem is that if you only have one and they're facing the other way and you have a great moment, you're definitely not going to get it.
no,
That's
you won't.
okay if if all you're doing is just trying to get better with it and test it out. You can
Yeah.
start with one, but eventually you're going to want probably three to be able to do something like this.
Whenever, yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, no. This
I was just
not a
wondering,
sport.
when I first saw this, I didn't even know what it was. And I just realized that they're playing frisbee, or I think it's ultimate frisbee.
Yeah.
It's a shit photo.
Yeah,
There's nothing more to it.
Yeah, this isn't what we're talking about here. This is basically a camera phone picture. Just it's too far away. Yeah,
It's terrible. Like it's nothing. No one's doing anything athletic.
Right.
No,
you have to be closer. Like if this is what you're shooting with, you have to wait until the action is much closer to you, and you have to wait until the frisbee is way lower and they're both trying to catch it. You can't just stand on the sideline and think that you're going to get pictures just whenever you want to. Like you have to work on the timing so that there's actually a conflict between the two, to where they're doing something athletic, either single or both of them. It has to be a lot closer so that what you're shooting is in focus and what's in the background isn't. Like those buildings aren't part of the story. That lighting pole isn't part of the story. Those trees aren't part of the story, but you've given them equal weight in the picture. And so it just becomes distracting. It really looks like one person chasing the other person. And you really have to do a lot of work to figure out where the frisbee is. This is not what we're talking about at all.
Oh, this is like, yeah, this is some quality bad stuff over here. That's really, really bad. I can't really add to the fact that, like, come on, because there's I don't think I've actually seen like his other work, right? No, I've seen that name before, and I don't remember actually being this bad. But this is really, 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 really bad. I mean, come on. You can't start off a new year this way. It's marginally better because he's doing something, but it's the same thing. At the end of the day, like you want like things to, you want to tell a story. Like I've said this so many times, and then that you're telling a story through your pictures. And what you want the story to have is a protagonist, and then you want the actual story, like the plot itself, and if there's anything else that's kind of attached to the story, you want to actually have it. But you want to like make sure the story is very simple, so you understand like what the context is there, and when you see it, you understand. And if there's not like a how do you say like a proper plot or a story, like you can't like there's no like emotional content, it's just really quite actiony type of thing, then you have to like really make sure that that's the only thing that's in the frame, and the other person or maybe the opponent adds to it and doesn't subtract to and then you're looking at this photo, it's not like there's two guys jumping to get the frisbee. It's just only one guy, and the other guy's just fucking running after him. And not like in a way like, oh my god, I'm gonna almost get him. It's like he's just kind of like, jogging. And that's what you don't want that. Like you want to be like, like both guys going for the frisbee. And there's a bit of a tension over there. Not like, the fucking this one guy is like going for a Sunday jog and the other guy's, jumping. And that's really my qualm with this photo.
Yeah, this is better than the one before because you're closer to what's going on. There is something actually athletic going on, but it's still very far away from what we're talking about. It's still too far away from you. It's still the backs of two people. It's still one person doing something athletic and the other person running after him. If this is what you're shooting with, if you don't have a long enough lens to do this, you really do have to wait until they're much closer to you. And that might mean sitting there for most of the game and only getting a couple pictures because that's when the frisbee came to your side. But that's why you have longer lenses, to be able to cover more of the field in an acceptable way. This is too far away for what you're shooting with. And again, we're not saying that you can't shoot the backs of people. Like there are definitely good examples of things from behind, but it really has to overcome every other thing to be a great picture if you're just shooting backs. And this is just, it's just not interesting enough. It's too far away. It's backs. It's not athletic enough. You have to really be selective when you're shooting at this distance with the lens that you have. You just can't do it.
I actually didn't think it was Reed, but we kind of associate like cycle pictures with Reed, and yeah, this one's very good.
There's nothing wrong with this.
Yeah. So yeah, it's always good. Like it's very, very, it's tastefully composed, and I like the fact that like that bit of an the space on the upper right is there's someone actually there, and you don't really need that person to be there, but it just kind of adds a little bit more to it,
It definitely helps.
Yeah, there's no space like wasted with
right.
this.
It fills that space. It would be fine without it, but it is a nice, it's good that you can see the guy and both of the tires in there, so that worked out really well. The only thing I would say about this is you don't need quite that much room at the top. It would be a little bit more impactful if you cut it down like half an inch from the top, because there's not enough going on that's different up there. But that's a minor quibble. This picture is good.
Yeah, I wonder what the actual format was. Was it like vertical thing or it was a horizontal thing?
I don't know. I'm fine with this except for the light.
I'm fine with it except for the foot being cut off at the bottom. It's a bit of a shame because like he's got everything there, but
I think it's enough. I think the foot would have been covered up by the rope anyway.
Yeah, then I would have actually seen a bit more of the rope, so I know that was actually cut by. Like that's it's yeah. But like the moment is it's a good moment, like it's a very, very good moment.
Yeah, but again, the light it's a little bit better here than it was in the other ones that we were talking about before, but it's not good. Like you're just going to run up into limits when you're shooting in light like this. The picture's just not going to look crisp. It's just not visually pleasing when you have this dingy kind of indoor light. You really do need to, at some point, control that light. Yeah, this is fun.
You did what you, and see, like, I think I was just talking the background thing. Like, see, this is a photo that is centered. So you want to kind of like make sure everything is centered. So, or kind of like, what is it? It should be like the same on both sides. So you see the lights, they're equal distance to the what is it? The person hiking the ball. What's the guy called?
The long snapper.
Oh, the long snapper. You see it. And that's like really like you have to realize these things are really, really important. If, for instance, like let's say the light is actually the light on the left is all the way to the left, and the light on the right is just where it is right now in the picture. I would be really bothered by it. And a lot of people will, because like your eyes are not supposed to see it that, because everything is so centered. You want everything to be centered, and everything to be like kind of perpendicular, not perpendicular. What's the word? Like a kind of a, like,
Symmetrical.
symmetrical. Yeah,
Symmet-
exactly, symmetrical. And yeah, and you have to really watch out for those things, and that's super, 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 super important.
Yeah, this picture could have gone very bad in a lot of different ways. If he had shot it a little bit off center, if he was standing like where you said on more on one side than the other side, if the kicker had been or the punter had been covered up by one of the hands, it wouldn't be as good. If his head had been lower and he had cut off the head of the punter with the helmet of the snapper, it wouldn't have been good. Like, this is a high wire act. Like, it looks like a simple picture. There's not any motion in it at all, but it's just I call these kind of architectural pictures where things really need to be in the right place and symmetrical and centered and all of that. This looks simple, but there's so many ways that it could have gone wrong that if you try to, if you say, okay, I like this picture and I want to go take a picture like this of something else or whatever, and you were 2 inches off center, or any of those other things that we were just talking about weren't symmetrical or weren't visible or were covered up or anything like that, then it just goes from being a really good picture to a throwaway. This is the kind of care that you need to make a picture like this work. The symmetry between the lights, the symmetry of the punter in between the helmet and the ball, between the hands, all of that stuff. The way that the yard line is exactly the same on one side as it is on the other side, even with the fisheye distortion. All of those things matter. Not any one thing, but all of them together matter. You have to have this level of care to get a picture like this. It's not as simple as just walking by and snapping something and continuing walking. You have to line it up.
I mean, it's one of those things you see on Sunday papers, or Monday papers. And that's it. There's nothing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's fine. It's definitely, it's fine. This would get published anywhere. It's fine. It's, you'd obviously like it. Yeah, you'd obviously like it to be closer to you, where maybe you just had his face and his hand. The right hand is actually interesting because the fingers are all spread out like that. But it's
so boring.
There's just it's just one guy, so the expression is good and the focus. You've done everything right. It's just there's a ceiling to how good a picture like this can be when it's just one guy yelling and you have the full body, and he's not yelling at anybody. There's not really any kind of conflict except for the expression on his face. Like I said, I do like both of the hands and I like the face, but then that's an awkward crop there. So, it's fine if you're going for something that could be published in a paper. This is absolutely that. But, is it a great picture? Is it a portfolio picture? Unless you're trying to say I shot Pogba before, that's really all it is.
He said something. So I just look through the posts here and see that a shot of a car is missing. Welcome back, Mike. So here's a shot from earlier in 2018. Of course, I think it came out quite well, but I'll wait your expert opinion. I've had a few changes in 2018, and these will continue in 2019. These are made possible by the advice from Matt and Ryu. So many thanks, guys. Here's to happy holiday and a great 2019 to all in this group. Thank you. Yeah, it's a bit of a meh picture. Welcome back. This is what you're expecting, probably. If you're doing like any sort of these blurry things, like panning photos, like there has to kind of like be a plane of focus somewhere. So you're kind of following that, and that becomes like the focal point of your picture. And to me, just by just having a casual glance at it, I don't even know where it's actually focused. And that's not good. And if you don't have that, It's just a blurry picture. And then the point of panning is that you see that there's a lot of blur in the entire frame, but part of it is really, you can see it is clearly in focus, and therefore panning works. And if it's just everything blurry, in most cases it doesn't work. In this, it doesn't work because it's all blurry.
Yeah, it looks like the spare tire is what's in focus and part of the grill. And that's, you know, so again, photography is a method of communication, and you're communicating whatever it is you shot with the person who's looking at it. And if you have a picture where 95% of it is out of focus and 5% of it is in focus, or, you know, whatever the terms are for panning, aligned with your emotion and not, that 5% is what you're communicating. So you're saying that the spare tire and that part of the grill are the important part of the picture, and that's not the case. So I don't mind the effort here. I don't mind the composition. The way you fit the car in the frame is fine. The background is fine. But the problem is that you're panning off of the car's axis. So the car, it looks like it's coming around a turn, I guess. And you have to match, like when I do this, I'm trying to either get like a sponsor name on there or the driver. Like those are the most important parts of a race car. And for this, I would have really, really preferred if the dashboard or the windshield and the driver were the parts that weren't blurred out instead of the tire and the grill. And that's hard to do when they're coming around a corner and you don't know exactly what speed they're going to be coming around. It takes a lot of practice to be able to, in hand-eye coordination, to really be able to move with it. You know, it's not just the speed, but it's, you know, the actual plane of where you're focusing and how you're moving. And all of that stuff is very hard and very complicated. The good news is that most of the time when you're shooting auto racing, you have a lot of different chances to do that, because most races are multiple lap kind of things where you just keep doing it over and over again, and eventually you'll get it. So when you're looking at these, look at what part you can clearly make out. You don't need to clearly be able to make out everything, but certainly like the driver is an important part. It's more important than the spare tire or the grill. So keep trying until you get the you know, the windshield or both the windshield and the driver clear, so that the rest of the picture can go to blur and you still really have a subject in the picture. You don't want the spare tire to be the subject.
No. Yeah, I've seen these pictures before, so I don't want to see them. Like at this point, like he knows that he can do this, so I don't really see the point of you actually showing us this. The bicycle picture is good because I don't think I've actually seen you do that kind of stuff, like really that up close using a wide angle lens and like really filling the entire frame with a human rather than like this, which is what? It's a fucking scenery, you know? And like I'm really quite frustrated when it comes to, like, since I'm actually doing climbing photos now. A lot of climbing photos consist of a dude or a woman climbing whatever location they're climbing, and it's this. You have like this entire landscape. That's the main thing, and like some, you know, person is just, you know, climbing. And to me, it's like, who gives a shit? Like
Yeah,
I'm actually like, you know.
I think the problem here is that it's a fine picture, right? Especially in the context of what snowboarding and skiing pictures, you know, the accepted aesthetic for them is wide, show the mountain, show the background, get the trees in there also.
Yeah.
So if all you do is look at skiing magazines, if there are any anymore, or websites or whatever, you're going to see a lot of this. And you know, I understand it. I understand that the scene or whatever is important, because you can't just have a bunch of close-ups of people skiing. But the problem is that this isn't my aesthetic, and this isn't what I think good pictures look like. I think you can have one or two of these. You know, if you're having if you're trying to pick one for your portfolio, you definitely want to show that you understand what's accepted as snow photography, right? But for me, this isn't a competition. This is, I'm guessing, a daughter or a wife, right? You can do whatever you want. You can tell them, okay, go over this jump and I'm going to be right behind it or whatever, and break off to the left because I'm going to be mostly to the right or something. You can set those things up. And I think that doing something like that is going to be much more rewarding. Getting up close with that wide angle lens and, you know, maybe getting completely underneath. I was just looking at some of my snowboarding pictures the other day, and I have ones where people are going directly over me and you can see like the bottom of the board and then their face just sticking out over it. Like those impact kind of pictures are what do it for me. And pictures like this it's just a landscape picture that happens to have somebody in it. And that doesn't mean that my way is better or their way is better. You know, certainly if you're going by, okay, what sells to those sites and those magazines and those companies, yes, this does. But this isn't what I think of as sports photography. This is what I think of as landscape photography with a person in it. So if you're coming to us for what should you do better, I'm saying that if you're up there with someone that you know and you can tell them, okay, just go down this hill and go over this jump or go over this mogul or something like that, I would want to be closer, as close as I could possibly get without being unsafe. And then if you see something else, if you see a cool way to integrate them, like if this person had been going over a jump and let's say they had cleared where the snow caps were on the mountain behind them and you could really clearly make them out against where there was less snow and more trees, then, you know, maybe that starts to be a better picture. But for me, I'm starting out as close as I can and then backing up from there if I need a little bit more context, but I wouldn't start here.
And yeah, that wraps up the first training ground for 2019. If you came in here by mistake and if you want to know more about what's going on, please go to biglensfastshutter.com. We are a sports photography website and video and podcasts. And what we do is that we basically teach people how to become a better sports photographer. Not the easiest type of thing to listen to when you do have your picture critiqued by us, because we will tell you like how it should be. But we do believe in a bit of tough love is going to really help you, you know, in the long run, and not having to like just say, hey, you're wonderful, great. Like, yeah, well, whatever, you know, you're not. And you have to know that, and you have to really push yourself into really becoming, you know, thinking a bit different, shooting a bit different, and not doing the same thing over and over and over, because that's like being an agency photographer or a newspaper photographer. So, and for people who do want to give us money, please go to patreon.com/BLFS. And that's patreon.com/BLFS. That is it. Have a wonderful February, and we'll see you back in when? March. Yeah, it's crazy, March. And I'm gonna try to find a way to get out of this thing, but I can't. All right, have a good one. See you in a bit, or see you next month.